Moravia, Polish, Morawi, Latin. Moravia is a historical country in the Czech Republic and one of the historical Czech lands, together with Bohemia and Czech Silesia. It was also one of the 17 former crown lands of the Cisleithanian part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire from 1867 to 1918 and one of the 5 lands of Czechoslovakia from 1918 to 1928. It has an area of over 20,000 square kilometers and about 3 million inhabitants. It takes its name from the Moravia River, which rises in the northern tip of the region and flows southward to the opposite end, being its major stream. Moravia's largest city and historical capital is Brno. Before the 30 Years' War, Olomouc was another capital. Though officially abolished by an administrative reform in 1949, Moravia is still commonly acknowledged as a specific land in the Czech Republic. Moravian people are considerably aware of their Moravian identity, and there is some rivalry between them and the Czechs from Bohemia. However, by nationality, most of the Moravian Slavs recognize themselves as Czechs, not Moravians. Geography. Moravia occupies most of the eastern part of the Czech Republic, including the South Moravian region, the Zemplín region, vast majority of the Olomouc region, southeastern half of the Vysočina region and parts of the Moravian Silesian, Pardubice and South Bohemian regions. Moravia borders Poland very shortly in the north, Czech Silesia in the northeast, Slovakia in the southeast, Lower Austria in the south and Bohemia in the west. Its natural boundary is formed by the Sudetes Mountains in the north, the Carpathians in the east and the Bohemian Moravian highlands in the west. The Thia River meanders along the border with Austria and the tripoint of Moravia. Austria and Slovakia is at the confluence of the Thia and Morava rivers. The northeast border with Silesia runs partly along the Moravice, Oder and Ostrovice rivers. Between 1782 to 1850, Moravia also included a small portion of the former province of Silesia, the Austrian Silesia to Prussia. Silesia's southernmost part remained with the Habsburgs. Geologically, Moravia covers a transitive area between the Bohemian Massif and the Carpathians west to southeast, or between the Danube Basin and the North European Plain. Its core geomorphological features are 3 wide vales, namely the Thia-Drachar Vale, the Upper Morava Vale and the Lower Morava Vale. The former 2 form the westernmost part of the Subcarpathia, the latter one is part of the Vienna Basin. The vales surround the low range of central Moravian Carpathians. The highest mountains of Moravia are situated on its northern border in Ruby Jesenic. The highest peak is Pradid. Second highest are the Moravian Silesian Beskids at the very east, with Smrk, and then south from here Javorniky. The White Carpathians along the southeastern border rise up to 970 meters at Velká Javorina. The spacious, but moderate Bohemian Moravian highlands on the west reach 837 meters at Devetscal. The fluvial system of Moravia is very cohesive, as the region border is similar to the watershed of the Morava River, and thus almost the entire area is drained exclusively by a single stream. Morava's far biggest tributaries are Thia from the right and Bekva. Morava and Thia meet at the southernmost and lowest point of Moravia. Small peripheral parts of Moravia belong to the catchment area of Lvah and especially Oder. The watershed line running along Moravia's border from west to north and east is part of the European watershed. For centuries, there has been plans to build a waterway across Moravia to join the Danube and Oder river systems, using the natural route through the Moravian Gate. Prehistory. Evidence of the presence of Homo dates back more than 600,000 years in the paleontological area of Stranska Skala. Attracted by suitable living conditions, early modern humans settled in the region by the Paleolithic period. The Predmoster archaeological site in Moravia is dated to between 24,000 and 27,000 years old. Caves in Moravský Kras were used by mammoth hunters. The oldest ceramic figure in the world was found in the excavation of Dolna Vestinice by Karol Absalon. History. Roman era. Around 60 BC, the Celtic Volcae people withdrew from the region and were succeeded by the Germanic Quadi. Some of the events of the Marcomannic Wars took place in Moravia in AD 169 to 180. After the war exposed the weakness of Rome's northern frontier, half of the Roman legions were stationed along the Danube. In response to increasing numbers of Germanic settlers in frontier regions like Pannonia, Dacia. In the 2nd century AD, a Roman fortress stood on the vineyards hill known as Bergstal, Radisco, which is situated above the former village Musov and above today's beach resort at Pasolovki. During the reign of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, the 10th Roman legion was assigned to control the Germanic tribes who had been defeated in the Marcomannic Wars. In 1927, the archaeologist GNIRs, with the support of President Thomas Garrigue Masaryk, began research on the site. Located 80 kilometers far from Vindobona and 22 kilometers to the south from Brno. The researchers found remnants of 2 masonry buildings, a praetorium and a balneum, including a hippocaustum. The discovery of bricks with the stamp of the Legio X Gemina and coins from the period of the emperors Antoninus Pius, Marcus Aurelius and Commodus facilitated dating of the locality. Ancient Moravia. A variety of Germanic and major Slavic tribes crossed through Moravia during the migration period before Slavs established themselves. In the 6th century AD, at the end of the 8th century, the Moravian Principality came into being in present-day southeastern Moravia, Zahorian southwestern Slovakia and parts of Lower Austria. In 833 AD, this became the state of Great Moravia with the conquest of the Principality of Nitra. Their first king was Mojmir. Louis the German invaded Moravia and replaced Mojmir with his nephew Rastis, who became Street Rastislav. Saint Rastislav tried to emancipate his land from the Carolingian influence, so he sent envoys to Rome to get missionaries to come. When Rome refused, he turned to Constantinople to the Byzantine Emperor Michael. The result was the mission of Saints Cyril and Methodius, who translated liturgical books into Slavonic, which had lately been elevated by the Pope to the same level as Latin and Greek. Methodius became the first Moravian archbishop. But after his death, the German influence again prevailed and the disciples of Methodius were forced to flee. Great Moravia reached its greatest territorial extent in the 890s under Svetopluk I. At this time, the empire encompassed the territory of the present-day Czech Republic and Slovakia, the western part of present Hungary, as well as Lysatia in present-day Germany and Silesia and the upper Vistula basin in southern Poland. After Svetopluk's death in 895, the Bohemian princes defected to become vassals of the East Frankish ruler Arnulf of Carinthia, and the Moravian state ceased to exist after being overrun by invading Magyars in 906. 7th union with Bohemia. Boleslaus I, the Premyslide ruler of Bohemia, took control over Moravia. Boleslaw I Kobry of Poland annexed Moravia in 999, and ruled it until 1019, when the Premyslide prince Bretislaus recaptured it. Upon his father's death in 1034, Bretislaus became the ruler of Bohemia. In 1055, he decreed that Bohemia and Moravia would be inherited together by primogeniture, although he also provided that his younger sons should govern parts of Moravia as vassals to his oldest son. Throughout the Premyslide era, junior princes often ruled all or part of Moravia from Olomouc, Brno or Znojmo, with varying degrees of autonomy from the ruler of Bohemia. Dukes of Olomouc often acted as the right hand of Prague dukes and kings, while dukes of Brno and especially those of Znojmo were much more insubordinate. Moravia reached its height of autonomy in 1182, when Emperor Frederick I elevated Conrad II Otto of Znojmo to the status of a margrave, immediately subject to the emperor, independent of Bohemia. This status was short-lived. In 1186, Conrad Otto was forced to obey the supreme rule of Bohemian Duke Frederick. 3 years later, Conrad Otto succeeded to Frederick as Duke of Bohemia and subsequently cancelled his margrave title. Nevertheless, the margrave title was restored in 1197 when Vladislaus III of Bohemia resolved the succession dispute between him and his brother Ottokar by abdicating from the Bohemian throne and accepting Moravia as a vassal land of Bohemian rulers. Vladislaus gradually established this land as Margraviate, slightly administratively different from Bohemia. After the Battle of Legnica, the Mongols carried their raids into Moravia. The main line of the Premyslide dynasty became extinct in 1306, and in 1310 John of Luxembourg became Margrave of Moravia and King of Bohemia. In 1333, he made his son Charles the next Margrave of Moravia. In 1349, Charles gave Moravia to his younger brother John Henry, who ruled in the Margraviate until his death in 1375. After him, Moravia was ruled by his oldest son, Jobst of Moravia, who was in 1410 elected the Holy Roman King but died in 1411. Moravia and Bohemia remained within the Luxembourg dynasty of Holy Roman kings and emperors, until inherited by Albert II of Habsburg in 1437. After his death followed the interregnum until 1453. Land was administered by the Landfriedens. The rule of young Ladislaus the Posthumous subsisted only less than 5 years, and subsequently the Hussite George of Podobrady was elected as the king. He again reunited all Czech lands into one man-ruled state. In 1466, Pope Paul II excommunicated George and forbade all Catholics from continuing to serve him. The Hungarian Crusade followed, and in 1469 Matthias Corvinus conquered Moravia and proclaimed himself as the King of Bohemia. The subsequent 21-year period of a divided kingdom was decisive for the rising awareness of a specific Moravian identity, distinct from that of Bohemia. Although Moravia was reunited with Bohemia in 1490 when Vladislaus Jagiellon, King of Bohemia, also became King of Hungary, some attachment to Moravian freedoms and resistance to government by Prague continued until the end of independence in 1620. In 1526, Vladislaus' son Louis died in battle, and the Habsburg Ferdinand I was elected as his successor. Moravia, like Bohemia, was a Habsburg possession until the end of World War I. In 1573 the Jesuit University of Olomouc was established. This was the first university in Moravia. The establishment of a special papal seminary, Collegium Nordicum, made the university a center of the Catholic Reformation, an effort to revive Catholicism in Central and Northern Europe. The second largest group of students were from Scandinavia. Brno and Olomouc served as Moravia's capitals until 1641. As the only city to successfully resist the Swedish invasion, Brno became the sole capital following the capture of Olomouc. The Margraviate of Moravia had, from 1348 in Olomouc and Brno, its own diet, or parliament, Zemský snem, whose deputies from 1905 onward were elected separately from the ethnically separate German and Czech constituencies. The oldest surviving theatre building in Central Europe, the Regitive Theatre, was established in 17th-century Moravia. Ottoman Turks and Tatars invaded the region in 1663, taking 12,000 captives. In 1740, Moravia was invaded by Prussian forces under Frederick the Great, and Olomouc was forced to surrender on 27 December 1741. A few months later the Prussians were repelled, mainly because of their unsuccessful siege of Brno in 1742. In 1758, Olomouc was besieged by Prussians again, but this time its defenders forced the Prussians to withdraw following the Battle of Domstadtel. In 1777, a new Moravian bishopric was established in Brno, and the Olomouc bishopric was elevated to an archbishopric. In 1782, the Margraviate of Moravia was merged with Austrian Silesia into Moravia Silesia, with Brno as its capital. This lasted until 1850. 20th century. Following the breakup of the Austro-Hungarian Empire in 1918, Moravia became part of Czechoslovakia. As one of the 5 lands of Czechoslovakia, it had restricted autonomy. In 1928, Moravia ceased to exist as a territorial unity and was merged with Czech Silesia into the Moravian Silesian land. After the German occupation of Czechoslovakia in World War II, Moravia was divided. Part was made an administrative unit within the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, and the area with more ethnic Germans was absorbed by the German Third Reich. In 1945, after the end of World War II and Allied defeat of Germany, Czechoslovakia expelled the ethnic German minority of Moravia to Germany and Austria. The Moravian Silesian land was restored with Moravia as part of it. In 1949 the territorial division of Czechoslovakia was radically changed. As the Moravian Silesian land was abolished and lands were replaced by Kraj, whose borders substantially differ from the historical Bohemian-Moravian border, so Moravia politically ceased to exist after approx. 11–16 years of its history. Although another administrative reform in 1960 implemented the North Moravian and the South Moravian regions, with capitals in Ostrava and Brno respectively, their joint area was only roughly alike the historical state and, chiefly, there was no land or federal autonomy, unlike Slovakia. After the fall of the Soviet Union and the whole Eastern Bloc, the Czechoslovak Federal Assembly condemned the cancellation of Moravian Silesian land and expressed firm conviction that this injustice will be corrected in 1990. However, after the breakup of Czechoslovakia into Czech Republic and Slovakia in 1993, Moravian area remained integral to the Czech territory, and the latest administrative division of Czech Republic is similar to the administrative division of 1949. Nevertheless, the federalist or separatist movement in Moravia is completely marginal. The historical Bohemian-Moravian border has been preserved up to now only by the Czech Roman Catholic administration, as the ecclesiastical province of Moravia corresponds with the former Moravian Silesian land. Gallery Moravia within Czechoslovakia between 1918 to 1928. Moravia as part of the Moravia Silesia within Czechoslovakia between 1928 to 1938. Moravia Silesia within Czechoslovakia between 1928 to 1938. Moravia within the Czech Republic. Moravian nationality, as declared by people in the 1991 census. Economy. An area in South Moravia, around Hodonín and Břeclav, is part of the Viennese Basin. Petroleum and lignite are found there in abundance. The main economic centers of Moravia are Brno, Olomouc and Zlín, plus Ostrava lying directly on the Moravian Silesian border, as well as agriculture in general. Moravia is noted for its viticulture. It contains 94% of the Czech Republic's vineyards and is at the center of the country's wine industry. Dukovany nuclear power plant. Moravian grapes. Almost all well-known Czech sporting, self-defense, military and hunting firearms come from Moravia. Also, Miopta rifle scopes are of Moravian origin. Moravian assault rifle CZ 805 Bren. Moravian assault rifle SAR VZ 58. Moravian handgun CZ 75. Moravian handgun ZVI Kevin, aka Micro Desert Eagle. Aircraft industry. The Zlin region hosts several aircraft manufacturers, namely Let Kunovus, ZLIN Aircraft A.S., Otrikovica, Vector Aerotechnic and Czech Sport Aircraft. Sport aircraft are also manufactured in Jihlava by Jihlavan Airplanes. Skyleader. Aircraft production in the region started in 1930s and there are signs of recovery in recent years and the production is expected to grow from 2013 onwards. Moravian aircraft Zlin Z50. Moravian aircraft Let L200 Moravia. Moravian aircraft Let L410. Moravian aircraft Vector F-55 Outback. Moravian aircraft Jihlavan KP2U Skyleader. Machinery industry. Machinery has been the most important industrial sector in the region, especially in South Moravia, for many decades. The main centers of machinery production are Brno, Blansko, Adamov, Kurum, Boskovice and Brekliv, together with a large number of other variously sized machinery or machining factories, companies or workshops spread all over Moravia. Electrical industry. The beginnings of the electrical industry in Moravia date back to 1918. The biggest centers of electrical production are Brno, Drasov, Frenstadt Pod Radhustum and Mohelnice. Cities.